10 ways the parental narcissist manipulates the in-law. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. As you know, narcissists spring up in all manner of different dynamics. The one that is often spoken about is the romantic relationship, but also narcissists ensnare people at work, through business relationships, but through being neighbours, through being friends, within the family also. Much might be made of a parental narcissist that has made life difficult for a son or daughter. In some instances, a parent has found that their child is a narcissist, and they have difficulties navigating that relationship. But there's also another individual in the dynamic who often gets overlooked, and that is the daughter or son-in-law. An individual who has married or has a relationship with the adult child of a narcissist and finds that their relationship with their boyfriend, girlfriend, partner or spouse is adversely affected by the presence of that person's parental narcissist. We all know the jokes about battle-axe mother-in-laws, but much of that will have originated from the behaviour of a parental narcissist that interferes in the relationship between her son and daughter-in-law, or the father-in-law who causes a problem between his daughter and the man who has married her. Now, it has to be remembered that there are parents who will be somewhat protective of their child, who still sees Tommy as the little boy running around in the back garden in his shorts, and that image never leaves them. But we're not talking about that kind of protectiveness. We're talking about an individual who has clearly exhibited the indicators that determine that that person is a narcissist, and therefore they have that entrenched need for control, to draw fuel, to seek character traits and residual benefits, and they do so by exhibiting their rampant sense of entitlement, an absence of emotional empathy, a lack of awareness and accountability for their behaviours, grandiosity, haughtiness, a lack of boundary recognition, the use of various manipulations, and demonstrating various aspects of the narcissistic dynamic. Where that individual originates, they will cause problems, not only for the adult child, that is, the adult child of that particular narcissist, but also for the person that has a relationship with that adult child, the in-law. The narcissist starts off by asserting control over their child, and it's easy. A 3-year-old child is easy to control. I don't mean in the sense of dealing with their tantrums, but the fact that the child is reliant upon that parental narcissist for a home, for being fed, for being looked after, and accordingly, the narcissist will find it very easy to control that child, and does so through the application of a variety of different manipulations. The child matures, control still remains easy, but then as that child gets into their teens, they start to form stronger friendships, possibly even moving into the realms of relationships. And this is where the parental narcissist control over that child becomes a problem. Because as the child no longer has that parent as their world, and because they are forging relationships with outsiders, friends, possibly romantically, that threatens the ability of the narcissist to maintain control over that child. This is for a number of reasons. First and foremost, it's because the parent is no longer able to monopolize the time of that child. Secondly, the child may not be as reliant upon the parental narcissist to supply some of their needs. Thirdly, those outside influences might start to cause that adult child, or rather the child of the narcissist, to start to consider, hang on a second, is my mother or my father's behaviour actually normal? Is it appropriate? Many children of narcissists don't realize what they were dealing with until some point in adulthood, if at all. And they often recount the fact that for years they just thought the behavior of their parents, whilst unpleasant, that particular parental narcissist, they just thought that was the norm because that was all that they knew. And it was only when they started to go round to friends' houses and they saw the way that those friends' parents behaved that they realised that there was something wrong with one or more of their own parents. The romantic relationship is particularly dangerous to the parental narcissist's need for control. Why is that? Well, at its simplest, when that child has matured and is in a serious relationship, they're probably having an intimate sexual relationship. They're spending a lot of time with that individual. And it means that they're far more likely to listen to the boyfriend or girlfriend than the parent. Not only is there the trope of not wanting to hang out with your parent or that you don't accept what they have to say because their views are stale and outdated, but there is the simple fact that if you've got a choice between someone who keeps telling you off and telling you what you should do and berating you or mollycoddling you, or someone who's giving you sexy time and makes you laugh and is fun to be around, it's a no-brainer as to who you want to spend time with. Therefore, naturally, that child, who's now matured, is going to want to spend time with their romantic partner. Not only does this threaten control in the sense of the grip that the narcissist has by way of a monopolization of time has been eroded, but it also means that there are two fundamental risks that are posed to that parental narcissist. The first is that the romantic partner, who now has the ear of that child of the narcissist, says, "Do you realise that your mum's really controlling?" They are able to see it, and they have the ear of their boyfriend or girlfriend who actually listens to what they have to say. Secondly, as a consequence of being freed to some extent of the influence of the parental narcissist, the child, the maturing child, has room to breathe, and with exposure to the behaviours of their romantic partner, possibly their parents and friends, that child starts to waken up and realises, hang on, my mum's behaviour is really odd. The way that my father conducts himself is controlling. And thus, that involvement with a romantic partner amounts to a huge threat to the control of that parental narcissist over their child. Should that child then move on to going to live with their romantic partner, become married to them, this poses an even greater threat to control. Indeed, it's arguable that the narcissist is losing control of that non-intimate secondary source child because their focus isn't upon their mother or father. No, instead, it is focused on their romantic partner instead. And therefore, in the circumstances, this means that the narcissist's need for control is being severely threatened. That once compliant little boy, who was always under control, has now had his head turned, in effect, by somebody else. That he has flown the nest, moved in elsewhere, spends his time with that person, has had children with that person himself, has married that individual, all poses a threat to control. In such circumstances, what can then happen is that whilst the child is still viewed favourably by the narcissist, it is the case that the interloping in-law is seen as the source of the problem. You've taken my son away from me. You've turned my daughter's head. You've spoilt our relationship. And thus, in those circumstances, it may well be the case that the child is still viewed in a golden light by the narcissist, and the blame is placed unfairly on the shoulders of the daughter or son-in-law. They are the one that is blamed for breaking up the relationship, for changing my son, for making my daughter so she doesn't want to see me any longer. Of course, what's actually happened is that the child of that narcissist has woken up and realised that the parent is toxic and problematic and may well be reducing their involvement. It might be that they realise that they are a narcissist and they're seeking to implement a total no-contact regime. But in such circumstances, it's often the case that the narcissist will blame the in-law, seeing them as the person that has poisoned their child against them. My little Johnny has always loved his mum until you came along. You have ruined our relationship. The typical blame shifting of the narcissist who fails to take account for their own behaviours, who fails to recognise that it's they that has caused the problem through their domineering control of their child, who has eventually had enough of it and has sought respite elsewhere. Instead, the narcissist is not programmed to recognise that that is the case and instead must respond by saying, "You, daughter-in-law, you, son-in-law, have come along. You've dripped poison into the mind of my child. You've turned them against me. You are the one that have led them by the hand away from our family. You've broken the family up." And that narcissist, unable to take acceptability or accountability for their own behaviours, apportions blame completely on the shoulders of the individual who has married their son or daughter or has forged a relationship with them that is of a serious nature. Where that occurs, what is the response of that narcissist? Well, there are 10 ways that the narcissist then looks to continue to manipulate the in-law for the purposes of trying to salvage control over their son or daughter, whilst similarly seeking to punish that intervening in-law. Here are the 10. Number 1, the criticism of the child's romantic choice. In order to invalidate the person that the child of the narcissist has chosen, with the intention of spending the rest of their life with them, the parental narcissist will repeatedly engage in criticism of that individual. In some instances, this will be done directly, insulting them for the decisions that they've made, the career that they have pursued, their parenting skills, for example. In other instances, it is done by complaining about that choice to other members of the family and often the child of the parental narcissist themselves, pointing out that they could have done better, that they've chosen somebody essentially below their station, that they've picked somebody that is beneath them, somebody that isn't going to look out for them, somebody who isn't as good as the parental narcissist. "You wanted someone more like me," suggests that mother narcissist to her son, once again denigrating his choice of partner. Number 2, criticism of the parenting skills of the particular individual. Often, it will be the case that grandchildren come on the scene, and the parental narcissist, having controlled their child, also seeks to control those children, the grandchildren, but does so alongside criticising the in-law in relation to their parenting skills. "Oh, I didn't do it like this with Johnny. You'll find that if you do this, they're more likely to sleep through the night. No, you're not doing it right. Let me show you how it's done." Not only is that individual suffering with perhaps sleepless nights, the uncertainty where it may be their first child, all of those aspects which come with becoming a parent for the first time, they then have the outside interference of the parental narcissist, frequently telling them that their parenting skills are below par, that they're doing it wrong, that we didn't do it that way, that if you follow this instead, well, I always did that with little Johnny, and he turned out all right, didn't he? Perhaps you don't really understand children, my dear. Which, of course, oh, the irony that comes from a parental narcissist trotting out that line. But attacking the parenting skills of the in-law is a common method of the parental narcissist causing problems for that relevant in-law. Number 3, causing a scene at a family event. The in-law dreads Christmas, Easter, Thanksgiving, the summer holidays, whatever it might be, because the parental narcissist will attend and make it all about them. A scene will be caused. They will sit and sulk because of the seating arrangement. They'll criticise the food that has been produced. They'll moan about the fact that they're too hot, they're too cold, or that the order of things isn't correct. Whatever it might be at whatever event that it is, that parental narcissist will find a way of denigrating the organisational and hosting skills of that in-law. If they've organised the trip, they'll complain about the choice of venue. If they're hosting at their house, they'll suggest ways that it could have been done better, that they will pick on the certain things that they've offered as being unsuitable. They'll be too picky about the food, for instance. I don't like this, you should have known. If you'd have spoken to me, I'd have told you beforehand what he or she likes. They will get unnecessarily upset about the way that they're being treated. There will be the falsification of some imagined slight, so that the narcissist erupts in a flood of tears, thus drawing attention onto them and perhaps usurping the special occasion, particularly if it relates to the in-law. For instance, it's the in-law's birthday. Number 4, refusing to attend the event because she or he is there. The in-law takes on the status of nemesis, and in such circumstances, the parental narcissist flat refuses to attend any event that they are at, often revising history to suggest that that individual ruined the last occasion that the family all came together, whilst, of course, avoiding the fact that it was actually the narcissist that did that. They utilise this as the explanation as to why they simply cannot tolerate the presence of that in-law in the same room as them. They put their foot down, demanding that it's either them or me, that if you think that she's going to be there, don't bother asking me, I'm not going to attend. And of course, there are instances where the child of that narcissist and the in-law are actually delighted that the narcissist isn't going, because at least it means that the event will proceed more smoothly. Don't think you've got away with it. You will be repeatedly reminded of the fact how you didn't invite them, even though it was them that decided that they weren't going to attend, or how you gave them no choice but to stay away, and that you were entirely selfish in deciding that you were going to host the event without them. Your failure to accommodate to their needs, i.e. give them control, will result in you being repeatedly reminded of your nastiness. Number 5, smearing the in-law to other family members. The narcissist will take it upon themselves, in order to subconsciously obtain that indirect assertion of control, to complain about the in-law to other members of the family, to the siblings of the child narcissist, to perhaps the non-narcissist parent of the child narcissist, to extended members of the family, pointing out apparent transgressions on the part of the in-law. Certain coterie members will accept what the narcissist says, which results in creating atmospheres at family events and causing dissension amongst the family group. Others will be well versed in the behaviours of the narcissist and will not necessarily accept the smearing, but this isn't going to stop the narcissist from trying. Number 6, providing help, which is actually interference. The parental narcissist takes it upon themselves to turn up uninvited. I was just passing and I thought that you would be interested in this new coffee brand that I've found. They then barge in on whatever event that you're having, nosying around and taking it over. They turn up when they're not invited, interrupting events with other people, family meals, your quiet time. They stand and tell you how you should be putting that fence up, or that you don't do it that way, or the car will never work if you drive it that way. They, of course, if chastised, retreat, claiming, I was only trying to help. I was only trying to lessen the burden for you. If you don't want my help, you just have to say so. You don't need to be nasty about it. And invariably the parental narcissist, failing to recognise boundaries and acting with that sense of entitlement, sharpen their elbows and barge their way in, offering advice and insight where it's not wanted or needed. And then, when it's not accepted, or if you're so brave as to point out that it's not necessary for them to behave this way, they will act all but hurt, claiming that they were just trying to help and turning on the waterworks in order to elicit sympathy and paint the in-law as the bad person. Number 7, repeated triangulation. The in-law finds themselves compared to previous boyfriends or girlfriends. Oh, how I liked Matthew. He was such an attentive boy. Thus, dear old Frank, who is the in-law, is always compared against the mythical abilities of Matthew, who in actual fact wasn't all that, but there's yet another revision of history by the narcissist. In my day, we did it like this. And repeatedly you're triangulated with the past, which the narcissist parent brings up with frequency, in order to demonstrate that you don't know what you're doing and the past was so much better. Time and time again, you as the in-law find yourself triangulated with previous boyfriends or girlfriends of your partner. You find yourself triangulated with events and objects, all done to put you down and make you look less effective. Number 8, belittlement. Whatever the in-law does, it's not good enough. They don't have a good enough job. They're not well paid enough. Their looks are below par. Their parenting skills are not at that which they ought to be. They're not that particularly sociable. They come from the wrong end of town. Whatever the in-law does, no matter how hard they work, no matter what they achieve, no matter how convivial they are, the parental narcissist is always on hand to shoot it down with a belittling comment. Often this might well be done through talking about that person rather than to them. Trisha isn't doing so well at work, is she? Remarks the parental narcissist in front of Trisha, but to somebody else, thus mixing up belittlement with a present silent treatment, talking about that person rather than actually addressing them. You'd have thought that John would have secured a promotion by now, wouldn't you? Says the parental narcissist to her husband, whilst John is sat across the dinner table from her. This is a particularly demeaning approach, talking about that individual whilst they are there, acting as if they don't exist. Number 9, favouritism of the child, for the purpose of excluding their partner, the in-law. In essence, it's all about favouring that child. And, in some instances, the child has been so conditioned, who now as an adult, has been so conditioned to the behaviour of the parental narcissist, they just go along with it because they either think, well, there's no harm in it, or it's better to do this to keep the peace. Just go along with it. And thus the in-law is treated to unnecessary praise of their partner, unfair comparison as to how wonderful and brilliant their son or daughter is compared to how they are. That, for instance, there's no equality. So, for instance, in their treatment of the child, of the narcissist, they're always favoured. They're given better gifts, for instance, at Christmas time compared to that that's given to the in-law. They're given preferential treatment rather than that of the in-law. They're invited, but the in-law isn't. And spurious excuses are given as to why this distinction should be made. Number 10. A refusal to assist. In most families, there is an implied understanding that the family ought to pull together. And so, for instance, that the parents, the in-laws, might offer some assistance. In some cases, it might be financial assistance. It might be coming over to help. Often it's the case, for instance, with child minding. But the parental narcissist decides to withdraw any kind of assistance. It's not offered. Even when asked, and asked politely, they've got something else that they must do and they cannot help out. They never offer any assistance in an attempt to leave the in-law overburdened, overwhelmed, and frustrated. Those are 10 ways that a parental narcissist will manipulate, specifically in relation to the in-law, who is seen as an interfering factor on the control of that parental narcissist's adult child. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.